I don't even know how to begin this. I've gone over this moment in my head so many times, replaying it, questioning it, hating it, wanting to forget it, but also not wanting to forget. It's something that should have never happened, something that I know is wrong, and yet I can't stop thinking about it. I don't have anyone to talk to about this. No one, not a single person in my life I could tell, without them looking at me differently forever. But I need to say it, even if no one ever really hears this, even if it just sits here, floating in the void. I need to get it out. This is the story of the night my mother crossed the line, and how I haven't been able to think straight since. Before I continue, I need to warn you. This story contains mature and deeply unsettling themes. It deals with family boundaries, emotional conflict, and a moment that changed the way I see everything. If this kind of topic makes you uncomfortable, you may want to stop reading now. This is not an easy story for me to tell, and it won't be an easy one to hear. My name is Ryer Johns. I'm 22 years old. I moved away from home a little over 2 years ago for college, and ever since then, I've only been back a handful of times, usually for holidays, sometimes for special occasions. But every time I went back, things felt different, not just because I was growing up, but because my family wasn't the same anymore. My parents divorced a little over a year after I left. It wasn't messy, no screaming, no court battles, no lawyers arguing over who got what. My dad just left, packed a bag one day, and never really looked back. My mom, Amaya, took it hard, harder than she let on at first. She put on a brave face, told me and everyone else she was fine, that she was better off without him. But I could tell. I could hear it in her voice, in the way she spoke about him when she thought I wasn't really listening. I don't think she ever fully got over it. Maybe she just buried it. Maybe that's why everything that happened. The thing is, my mom and I never had the kind of relationship where we talked about personal things. We were close, but not in a share your feelings kind of way. She wasn't the kind of mom who sat me down to have deep talks about life. If anything, we kept things light, surface level, simple. So when I went back home for Christmas this past year, I wasn't expecting anything to be different. I figured we'd have dinner, exchange gifts, maybe watch some old holiday movies like we used to. And for the most part, that's exactly what happened, at least at first. But that night was different, and I had no idea that by the time the night was over, I'd never look at my mother the same way again. I keep asking myself if I could have done something differently, if I should have said something, stopped it, walked away sooner. But the truth is, I didn't, and that's the part that haunts me the most. Before I get into what actually happened, you have to understand what my relationship with my mom was like, because without that, none of this is going to make sense. None of it. My mom, Amaya, was always, I don't know how to describe it, present but distant. She wasn't cold or neglectful. She made sure I had everything I needed, showed up to my school events, always had dinner on the table, told me she loved me. But there was always the space between us, a quiet, unspoken distance, like we were close but not too close. I don't mean that in a bad way. Some parents are overly affectionate, always hugging, always talking about their feelings. That wasn't my mom. She wasn't the kind of person to sit me down and ask me how I was really doing. If I had a problem, I had to come to her, not the other way around. She loved me, but she wasn't open, not in that way, and I was fine with that. It worked. Some things just don't need to be said out loud. We understood each other in our own way. My dad, on the other hand, was the opposite. He was loud, charismatic, always the center of attention. He had this way of making everyone feel like they were the most important person in the room. But the thing about my dad is that he didn't stick around, not just physically, but emotionally too. He was there, but he wasn't really there, if that makes sense. And then one day, he was just gone. No warning, no drawn-out fights, just a conversation at the dinner table about how things weren't working anymore. I don't even remember him packing. He just walked out of my life like he was walking out of a grocery store. I don't think I even fully processed it at the time. I was already in college, living my own life, doing my own thing. I wasn't a little kid who needed his parents to be together anymore. At least, that's what I told myself. My mom didn't talk about it much. She didn't cry in front of me, didn't ask for my advice, didn't vent about how much she missed him. If anything, she acted like she was relieved. But I knew better. You don't spend 20 years with someone and just shrug when they walk away. You don't suddenly become fine overnight. Over time, little things started to show. The way she'd sit alone in the living room at night, staring at nothing. The way she started drinking more, just a glass of wine at first, then two, then more. The way she started making little comments, almost like she was testing the waters, seeing if I'd say something. Men are all the same, she'd say, swirling the wine in her glass. They take what they want and then they leave. I never knew what to say to that. What was I supposed to say? Not all men. You'll find someone else. It'll get better. None of those would have meant anything to her, so I just sat there and listened. That's all I could do. The first time I came home after the divorce was weird. My old house was gone. She had moved into this smaller apartment, just the right size for one person, no guest rooms, no big family dinners, just a small, quiet space that didn't really feel like home. The walls were bare, no pictures, no decorations, just empty. She greeted me with a smile, pulled me into a hug, told me how much she missed me, and I could tell she meant it. But there was something else there too, something I couldn't quite put my finger on. Maybe loneliness, maybe something deeper. We had dinner, we talked, we caught up. She asked about school, about my friends, about whether I was seeing anyone. And then she asked something she had never asked before. Are you happy? I didn't know how to answer. No one had ever really asked me that before. It caught me off guard, so I just laughed and said, yeah, I guess so. She smiled at that, but it wasn't a happy smile, more like a sad one, like she didn't believe me, or maybe she didn't want to believe me. Maybe she was hoping I'd say no. That way at least she wouldn't be the only one. Every time I went back home, I could feel it. The way she clung to our conversations just a little too much, the way she poured herself another glass of wine before I even finished mine, the way she held on to me a second longer when we hugged goodbye. She didn't have anyone else, not really. She had coworkers, sure, a few friends she'd grab coffee with, but no one close, no one to talk to about the things she was feeling, no one to sit with her at night when the apartment was too quiet, no one to fill the space my dad left behind. And that's when I started feeling weird about it, like I wasn't just her son anymore, like she needed me to be something more. Not in a creepy way, at least, not at first, but in a way that made me feel responsible for her, like I had to be the one to keep her from falling apart, like I was the only thing holding her together. And that's a hard thing to carry because I wasn't sure if I wanted to carry it. But how do you say that to your own mother? How do you tell her that the weight she's putting on you is too much? How do you tell someone you love that you can't be what they need? I didn't know how to say it, so I didn't. I just let it happen. I let her talk. I let her drink. I let her tell me things she never would have said before. And with every visit, the lines kept getting blurrier, and I just kept ignoring it because what else was I supposed to do? It was Christmas Eve when I got to her apartment, my second Christmas at her new place. By then, the space didn't feel as empty as it did the first time I visited. She had decorated, added pictures to the walls, filled the shelves with little trinkets and candles. It felt warmer, more lived in, but it still didn't feel like home, not really. She greeted me with a tight hug, held on for a second longer than usual. She told me how much she missed me, how quiet it had been without me around. She had cooked dinner. Way too much for just the two of us, but I could tell she liked the excuse to make something special. We ate, we talked, we laughed, and for a little while it felt normal, almost like before. But then she brought out the wine, and that's when things started to shift. I wasn't surprised. She'd been drinking more since the divorce, but that night, it was different. She poured her first glass before we even finished eating. She kept refilling her glass, like she was afraid of letting it get empty. I'm just celebrating, she said, laughing it off. It's the holidays, right? I nodded, forced a smile, but I could feel it. Something was off. Her laughter was just a little too loud, her smile a little too forced, and the way she looked at me, there was something else behind her eyes, something I couldn't quite place. She poured me a glass too. I wasn't much of a wine drinker, but I took it. I figured it would help her relax, help make things feel normal. But looking back, I think she was already too far gone. At first, we just talked about the usual stuff, how school was going, if I was seeing anyone, if I had plans for after graduation. But then the conversation started drifting somewhere else. She started talking about herself, about how lonely she'd been, about how hard it was to start over after my dad left, about how much she missed having someone around, not just emotionally, but physically. I remember gripping my wine glass, feeling the stem press into my fingers. I didn't know how to respond. What was I supposed to say? I understand. I'm sorry. There was nothing I could say that would make it better. She kept going. She talked about how hard it was to date again at her age, how most men her age weren't interested in women like her, how the few dates she did go on made her feel like she was chasing something she'd never get back. Then she said something that made my stomach turn. You're lucky, Ryer. You don't know what it's like to feel unwanted.
Især det her.
The words sat heavy in the air, hanging between us like something I wasn't supposed to touch. My mom wasn't just venting. She was confessing. I swallowed, tried to keep my voice steady. Mom, you're not, I'm serious, I said. She interrupted. I'm not young anymore. I'm not beautiful. I'm just here. I shook my head. That's not true. She gave me a look, this tired, knowing smile, like she had already decided I was lying. It's okay, she said, taking another sip. I've accepted it. I didn't know what to do. I wanted to change the subject, steer the conversation somewhere else, but she kept talking. She started telling me things I didn't want to know about how she tried to put herself out there, how she bought herself things to fill the void, how nothing really worked. I wanted to leave. I should have left. But I didn't. I just sat there drinking my wine listening. At some point, she reached for the remote and put on a movie, Challengers. She said she had been wanting to watch it. I didn't argue. I just nodded, relieved to have something to focus on other than the weight of our conversation. The first half of the movie was fine. We sat there side by side, the only sounds coming from the screen. The wine was starting to make me feel warm, a little hazy, but I was still aware, still present. Then the movie hit one of its more intimate scenes. It wasn't anything extreme, but it was enough to make me shift in my seat, suddenly very aware of my surroundings. I kept my eyes on the screen, trying not to react, but then I felt my mother looking at me. Does this make you uncomfortable? She asked. I shrugged. Not really. She smirked, swirling her glass.
Good.
That means you're not a kid anymore. I forced a chuckle, trying to play it off, but I could feel my body tensing, my heart beating just a little too fast. And then it happened. It was subtle at first, a shift in the way she was sitting, the way her knee brushed against mine, the way her fingers grazed my arm, just for a second too long. I told myself I was imagining it, that it was the wine, that she was just being affectionate in the way drunk people sometimes are. But then her hand moved again, this time deliberate and slow. She wasn't just touching me. She was crossing a line. My whole body locked up. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move, couldn't do anything except sit there, frozen in place, as my brain tried to catch up with what was happening. I should have pulled away. I should have said something. But I didn't. I just sat there, my mind screaming at me to react, but my body refusing to listen. The moment stretched on, thick with something I couldn't name. The movie kept playing, the sound filling the room, but I wasn't hearing it anymore. All I could hear was the pounding in my chest, the rush of blood in my ears. Then she whispered something I still hear in my head over and over again. It's okay. But it wasn't, and I knew that. I knew it then, and I know it now. But in that moment, I let it happen, and that's what I don't know how to live with. When it was over, everything changed. Not in a dramatic way, not with screaming, not with some big argument, but in silence. A silence so heavy, so suffocating, I could barely breathe. I didn't move. I didn't speak. My whole body felt like it wasn't mine anymore, like I had been pulled out of myself and was just watching the way my mom sat there next to me, still sipping her wine, still watching the movie, as if nothing had happened. The credits started rolling, the screen faded to black, and she just stretched, let out a small sigh, and stood up, like it was any other night. I'm going to bed, she said. You should get some sleep too. We do presents in the morning. Then she smiled at me, a soft, tired smile, like nothing was wrong, like we had just spent a normal night together, and then she turned and walked down the hall to her room, shutting the door behind her. I just sat there, staring at the screen, at my own reflection in the black TV. My hands were clenched, so tight my fingers felt numb. My heart was pounding so hard it hurt. Did that really just happen? Was this real? I wanted to tell myself that I imagined it, that maybe the wine had messed with my head, that maybe she had just been drunk, affectionate, motherly in some weird way. But I couldn't lie to myself. I knew what happened. I knew what it was. And I had let it happen. I felt sick. I felt dirty. But the worst part, the part one really can't say out loud, I didn't just feel disgusted. I felt confused. And that confusion made me feel even worse. I sat there for a long time, staring at nothing, my mind running in circles. Do I pretend it didn't happen? Do I confront her? What would I even say? And what if she denied it? What if she told me I was crazy? What if she looked me in the eyes and said, "You're imagining things?" Would I believe her? Would I let myself believe her? I didn't know what to do, so I did nothing. I just sat there, listening to the sound of the heater clicking on and off, the hum of the fridge in the kitchen. The world felt so normal, so unchanged, while everything inside me was shattering. Eventually, I forced myself to stand. My legs were shaky, my body felt heavy, like I was carrying something I couldn't put down. I walked to the bathroom, shut the door, turned on the sink, and splashed cold water on my face. I looked at myself in the mirror. My eyes were bloodshot, my face pale. I barely recognized myself. What the hell just happened? I stayed there for a while, just staring, just breathing. Then, finally, I turned off the light and went to my room. I lay down, pulled the blanket over me, and stared at the ceiling, waiting for sleep that never came. The next morning was worse. Not because she said anything, not because she acted guilty or ashamed, but because she didn't. She acted normal, completely, perfectly normal, like nothing had happened. I woke up to the smell of coffee. When I walked into the kitchen, she was standing there, flipping pancakes, humming to herself. She turned when she saw me and smiled. "Good morning, sleepyhead." Like I had just gotten a full 8 hours, like I hadn't spent the whole night lying in the dark, replaying every second of what happened. I just nodded, muttered, "Morning," and sat down at the table. She poured me coffee, put a plate of pancakes in front of me, sat across from me like she had 1,000 times before. "Merry Christmas," she said, clinking her coffee mug against mine. I forced a smile. "Merry Christmas." My stomach was in knots. I could barely swallow my food, but she kept talking like everything was fine, like nothing was different. "Did you sleep okay?" she asked. I almost laughed. I almost said, "Are you serious?" But instead, I just nodded and lied. Yeah, like a baby. I wanted to scream. I wanted to stand up, flip the table, make her acknowledge what had happened. But I didn't. I just sat there, playing along, pretending everything was fine, because if she could pretend, then maybe I could too. We opened presents after breakfast. She had gotten me a new jacket, some books she thought I'd like, a watch, normal stuff, thoughtful stuff like any other Christmas. I gave her the scarf I bought her, some candles, a little framed picture of the two of us from when I was a kid. She got emotional over that one, said it was beautiful, said she'd put it on her nightstand. I wanted to be sick. The rest of the day went by in a blur. We watched another movie, played a board game, ate leftovers for dinner. Every second felt unbearable. The way she laughed, the way she smiled at me, the way she touched my arm when she talked. Was it always like this, or was I just noticing it now? I didn't know, and that scared me more than anything. By the time the day was over, I was exhausted, not just physically, but mentally, emotionally. I told her I was going to bed early. She just kissed my forehead, told me she loved me, and said goodnight. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling again, just like the night before. But this time, I didn't just feel sick. I felt lost. Because I didn't know what scared me more, the fact that she was acting normal, or the fact that part of me wanted her to. I thought leaving her apartment would make things better. That once I was back at school, back in my own space, back to my normal routine, I could forget about it, bury it, pretend it never happened. But that didn't happen. It wasn't just the memory that stayed with me. It was the feeling, the weight of it, the way it wrapped around my brain and refused to let go. I couldn't stop thinking about it, and I hated that I couldn't stop thinking about it. It wasn't just about what she did. It was about me, about my reaction, or my lack of reaction, about how I let it happen, about how I didn't pull away, about how even now, part of me doesn't know if I wanted to. And that's the part that messes me up the most, the part that keeps me awake at night, the part that makes me feel like I don't even know who I am anymore. I tell myself that what I'm feeling is just a reaction to trauma, that my brain is trying to make sense of something that never should have happened, that it's normal to have intrusive thoughts after something like this. But that doesn't make it easier, because it's not just shame I feel. It's not just disgust. It's curiosity. And I don't know what to do with that. There are moments where I catch myself remembering how it felt, not just the horror of it, not just the confusion, but the sensation, the warmth, the touch. And the second I realize what I'm doing, I feel sick, like I need to scrub my own brain clean. Because what kind of person thinks about something like that? What kind of person lets a memory like that linger? What kind of son am I? I start questioning everything, every memory, every interaction, every thought I've ever had about her. And that's when I realize something that makes me want to crawl out of my own skin. I've thought about her before, not in this way, not in any way that I ever considered real, but there were moments, small, fleeting moments, where I looked at my mom and felt something I pushed down, something I ignored, something I told myself was just a weird trick of the brain. And I never thought about it again. But now I can't stop thinking about it, and I don't know if that means something was always wrong with me, or if this moment created something wrong in me. Did this change me, or was I already like this? I don't know, and I'm afraid of the answer. I needed to understand. I needed to know why this was still in my head, why I couldn't shake it off like a bad dream. I kept telling myself it was just shock, just the aftermath of something my brain wasn't wired to handle. But that didn't explain everything. That didn't explain me. So I started searching, quietly, privately, late at night when no one was around, when the dorm was silent, when I could type things into my laptop without worrying about someone looking over my shoulder. I didn't even know what to search for at first. I just stared at the screen, fingers hovering over the keyboard, not even sure what I wanted to find. But eventually, I started typing. Why can't I stop thinking about something I regret? Is it normal to feel confused after a traumatic experience? Can the brain trick you into liking something that's wrong? The results were vague, a mix of self-help articles, Reddit threads, and psychology papers I couldn't fully understand. But nothing answered the real question burning inside me. So I dug deeper. I started looking into things I never thought I'd have to read about: family boundaries, trauma, the psychology of blurred parental lines, a phrase I didn't even know existed until I saw it in some academic paper buried in the depths of the internet. And the more I read, the worse I felt, because there was no clear answer, no simple explanation that could wrap this up into a neat little box and make it all go away. I thought about therapy. I really did. I even looked up therapists near me, hovered over the book an appointment button more times than I can count. But I couldn't do it. I couldn't imagine sitting across from a stranger, looking them in the eye, and saying it out loud. My mom did something to me, and I don't know how to feel about it. What would they say? Would they be professional, nodding, taking notes, like it was just another case file to them? Would they pretend not to judge me, even though I know they would? Would they tell me I was broken, that I was sick, that something inside me was wired wrong? And what if they told me what I was most afraid of? What if they told me this would define me forever? I started thinking about confronting her, sitting her down, making her acknowledge it, forcing her to say the words out loud. Maybe if she admitted it, maybe if she apologized, maybe if she felt something, I could start to move on. But then I imagined it, the conversation, the way her face would change, the way she might deny it, laugh it off, tell me I was being dramatic. Or worse, the way she might not deny it, the way she might look at me with that same soft, tired smile and say, "It's okay." I couldn't handle that. I wasn't ready for that. So I did nothing. I kept it inside. I buried it, and I told myself I'd figure it out eventually. But I still don't know if that's true. It's been months since that night, and if you're wondering, no, I still haven't talked to her about it. I don't know if I ever will. Maybe I'm scared of what she'd say. Maybe I'm scared of what she wouldn't say. Maybe part of me just wants to pretend it never happened, because admitting it means accepting that everything changed that night, that I can't go back to the way things were before. And that's the hardest part. Knowing that no matter what I do, no matter how much time passes, I can never unsee it. I can never unfeel it. I can never erase the way it rewired something in my brain. I don't have all the answers. I don't know if I ever will. But I do know that some lines, once crossed, can never be uncrossed. Some things, once broken, can never be put back together the same way. So now I have to ask you, what would you do if you were in my shoes? If someone you trusted, someone who raised you, someone you loved more than anything, did something that changed the way you saw them forever, could you move past it? Could you pretend it never happened? Could you still love them the same way? Or would you walk away? I don't know what the right answer is. I don't know if there's a right answer. But I do know that pretending something didn't happen doesn't make it disappear, and silence doesn't heal wounds. It just buries them. Maybe one day I'll find the courage to face this head-on. Maybe one day I'll ask the questions I'm too afraid to ask. Maybe one day I'll stop feeling like I'm trapped between shame and curiosity, between love and disgust, between the past and the future. But today is not that day. And until that day comes, all I can do is keep asking myself the same question: what now?